Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Behind the Cape. I'm Data Superhero Keith Belanger, and I'm excited to be joined by fellow Data Superhero Jan. Thanks again for coming. Let everybody know a little bit about yourself.
Thank you very much, Keith. A pleasure to be on the show. Thank you for having me. My name is Jan Laznicka, and I'm first and foremost, another data superhero, and very happy to have this title. And I work as a data consultant and a data engineering practice manager at Billigence. We're a consulting company, and one of our specialties is that we do a lot of work with Snowflake and this great technology. So, well, I've been around for some time and worked in different areas of BI, data warehousing, and data cloud in general. And yes, now these days, doing a lot of work in the data engineering space, especially with Snowflake.
That's great. And at Summit, all of us heard about the announcement of DBT projects and Snowflake bringing basically DBT core directly into Snowflake, and you're really going to dive more into that today. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. This was one of the major launches for me, especially because I love DBT. I love the technology and bringing it together with Snowflake and actually building it into Snowflake. That's for me a big game changer and another approach that we can now take to data transformation and to data engineering in general in Snowflake, which is fantastic.
That's great. So why don't let's dive into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's jump into slides for a second, if we may. And I'm just going to do a quick introduction. First of all, I mentioned I'm a data consultant. So I'm with Billigence. We're a global data consultancy originally founded in Sydney, Australia, but now with offices all around the world. And I'm specifically based in Prague, Czech Republic, where I'm also leading the Snowflake user group. So if anyone from Central Europe is listening, feel free to check it out and join us. And I'll be happy to meet you in one of our meetups. But for the topic of today, right, Snowflake. I believe if you're watching this video, you know what Snowflake is about. One platform, many workloads in the cloud, and we'll be focusing on one specific topic, and that's data engineering and specifically DBT projects. So one of the components in Snowflake that we can now use for data engineering. And I mentioned it, right? So you can, even before DBT projects in Snowflake, you had many options on how to do transformations in this great platform, whether it's the classic way of doing things, store procedures, orchestrating them with tasks, or the new things like dynamic tables. Then you can use Snowpark to run Python, Scala, Java, other languages, and do it differently. You can do pandas on Snowflake. Now also different things with Spark also coming to Snowflake. But one of the greatest additions for me personally is running DBT directly in Snowflake, which I mentioned already. Like for me, it seems like a game changer.
Yeah, and I think I've heard that it's over 50% of the compute generated in Snowflake is based from DBT, whether it's DBT Cloud, DBT Core. So it's a huge footprint on Snowflake.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like 50%, that's massive. That's
Yeah.
massive. And I've worked with different regions with Billigence, and one thing was certain: everywhere I go, there's somewhere DBT present, and you mentioned it in different ways, whether it's DBT Cloud or self-hosted DBT Core, but very often pointing to Snowflake and actually running the transformations, and Snowflake being the main data warehouse behind DBT.
Yep.
Right. So maybe I don't know. Quick intro into what DBT is, because maybe not everyone watching is familiar. So in essence, it's an open source data transformation tool that enables engineers to do transformations in a really efficient, easy, and actually fun way, right? So you can do the transformations in DBT, run tests, documentation at the same time, and it's just well-built platform or well-built components for transformations. It actually, like when you think about DBT, for me, it's the T in the ELT or ETL process, right? So it's mainly for the transformations. So you still need to do the extraction and loading somewhere else, but for transformations, DBT, that's the tool. And I mean, like for just an example, right? So normally when you write, when you build tables and when you write transformations, you need to create a table. You need to reference in your select the things that you want to bring into the table in the full way, right? And you can see it here on the right-hand side, right? So the upper one, when we look at the orders table, this is what you write in DBT, and below, that's what runs in your data warehouse. So you just write it as selects, and you write the references dynamically. That's the essence of DBT.
Right.
Well, I'm going to jump into Snowflake, and let's have a look at it together let's have a look at it live. But first of all, so what are our options, and what were our options before DBT came into as an inbuilt functionality into Snowflake? So first of all, of course, DBT Core, I mentioned the DBT open source transformation tool, so you can self-host it. That's the first option, right? Gives you maximum flexibility, but sometimes, and also importantly in enterprises and big companies, there's some overhead to managing it. You need some airflow or something to actually do the scheduling and running and all of these things around. But it can be cost efficient, right? The other option is DBT Cloud, a great tool, a fully managed a tool that actually is a same as Snowflake, software as a service. You point it to Snowflake or other data warehouse, and it runs, it's managed for you. It's somehow costly, right? So that might be the disadvantage, but it's another option for companies, and many companies like it. But now there's, with DBT in Snowflake, the third option, right? You have the DBT core, but you have it natively in Snowflake. So you have all the great things of DBT, but you don't have to worry about the hosting. And the great thing is, it's inbuilt in Snowflake, and the only thing that you pay for is actual compute that it uses. So the compute that you would use normally doing the transformations different way. So you don't pay anything extra when it comes to running DBT in Snowflake. Of course, one thing to mention here at the beginning is it only works if your data are in Snowflake. With the other two options, you can point DBT to other platforms as well. DBT projects, that's the name of the functionality in Snowflake, is designed specifically for running DBT on your Snowflake data. That's the main thing. That's the bottom line.
Yep.
Right. Last slide, promise, and then we go to the tool. So how do they look? What are the different options? So DBT Core, you normally have your project, and I'm going to talk about what project is in a second, in some development tool like Visual Studio, and then you need to somehow, you run it through your command line, and then if you need to deploy it in more enterprise way, you need to orchestrate it through something like Airflow and stuff like this, but that's how it could look. DBT Cloud, managed for you. It has all great features around like lineage and all these different things that you can see directly in the IDE. That's the second option that we mentioned. And now DBT projects. Let's have a look at it. So I'm now going to escape our slides.
While you're switching over, I have a question for you. And maybe you're going to show it. But if you're an organization that's, say, been using DB Core for the last 3 years and you want to leverage DBT projects in Snowflake, are you in a rebuild scenario, or is there an option that you can leverage what you have done in DBT Core in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. You can leverage what you've done because it's just DBT Core, but it's hosted elsewhere. So you can actually take your projects and you can actually utilize them and upload them into Snowflake. The only thing is, you need to have your data in Snowflake. So the scenario that I mentioned, if you have multiple platforms, you can only migrate here the part that's relevant for Snowflake.
Great. Good to know.
Perfect. Yeah. So if you've built something in DBT in one way or another, the project itself, you can bring it to Snowflake, no problem. So we're here in Snowflake, and a couple of months back, we saw the introduction of workspaces. And that's where we're going to start today. So the new developer experience as part of Snowflake, where you have this file-based structure on your left-hand side, and then you have the project in the middle. And you can have different worksheets and all the different things here in the workspace environment. That's also where you have and where you can have your DBT projects. And it's actually very simple to create one. I have one created here already, but if we want to create a new DBT project, it's as simple as clicking here, add new, and you can select DBT project. And that actually creates the structure of the DBT project, which we can see here for you, and actually starts and creates the DBT project in your Snowflake. Once it's ready, and if you're familiar with DBT Core, you can see the familiar looking interface or file structure on your left-hand side. And let me just boost performance of my laptop here. Anyway, you can see we have the DBT project YAML, the file that actually defines how your DBT project is structured. You have the profiles where you set up how your different environments work, right? You have all the different things, and we're going to jump into them in a second. But also, you have this top pane that actually enables you to run your DBT commands. Because what DBT is about, you build some models. Models equals tables or views in your data warehouse, and then you run those models in some sequence. And the running pane is here on top. What I have here is a simple DBT project. It's actually focused on Eurovision data. So we have some Eurovision data behind the hood. So for those of you familiar with the Eurovision Song Contest, this data will look familiar to you. And we have the main folder here called models, right? That's where our transformations sit in DBT, in the models folder. And you can then subfolder it, and you can make a structure. And so, for example, let's have a look. We have various Eurovision contestants, right? So the singers and the bands that participated in the contest. And here we have a model, and you can see it's just a select. So I mentioned it previously. In DBT, you write things as selects. And what DBT does, if I now click run, and I can actually hit it so that it's running while I'm talking, it actually takes all these models that I have here written as SQL files, it wraps them into create table as or create view as, based on the profile that I'm working on. It decides in which table, in which database, in which environment, so to say, it will build these objects, which schemas and all of these different things I have it defined here. And it builds the content behind the hood, right? So we can see it now in the results that it actually, by clicking run, took all my models that I have here, and in the right sequence, because it knows the dependencies, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, it built all my models as objects in my databases. So for example, this specific one, stage Eurovision contestants, we can have a look at it, right? So I'm going to open it here in a different tab. And we can browse what DBT just created for us just by clicking the run button. So let's have a look. You can see I selected dev environment. My dev environment is pointed to the dev database. In the dev database, I have some schema structure. This is simple, right? So I did, well, my models in the staging folder will be built in a staging schema, right? So we're doing it really simply here. You can see these were created 1 minute ago. That's the run that we did. And if I check the contestants, we'll be able to see here, if I click the data preview, we'll be able to see here the different singers and the different artists staged into the staging table by DBT based on that SQL that we've written. And I think that's pretty amazing how easy it is from the moment you write this stuff to actually deploy these things into your different environments. It's just a click of a button here. It's all embedded within the workspace environment. That's pretty cool.
It's really great. It's kind of like Snowflake is taking over the world, right? How much in the past where you'd have to go to, tool number one. And then when you're done with tool number one, you have to go to tool number two to do this, then the tool number three to do that, and tool number four to do that. And then finally back to Snowflake, that now you haven't left Snowflake, right, to do any of this stuff. And as we all know, in the world we are today, every second counts. And getting your data to your consumers, in a more timely manner, is necessary.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think the thought process, or the mindset that Snowflake has, and the team building Snowflake has, is simplicity, right? And that's what I like. This is no overhead of managing this at all, right? So it's simple to deploy. You have it here. You can work on different environments, and then we'll also go to the stuff of how you can actually deploy this and how you can manage in production, because you just don't want to always click run every day, right? That's not the way we do it in production. We want to schedule these things, and it's great. And we'll get to that. I'll show you how dbt projects is actually linkable to the long time existing features of Snowflake that we all love and use.
Great.
Right. So, this is how you build the different tables and views. Then, of course, this stuff is then accompanied by the YAMLs. The YAMLs then define, am I building these objects as tables? Am I building them incrementally, or am I always recreating them? All these things you tweak behind the hood, but it's same as dbt core. So the incremental strategies on all of these things, you can use them here. And I'm not going to go into the details of that because this is focused on dbt projects, not dbt itself. One thing I want to mention, though, is running is just one thing that you do in dbt, right? You do tests. You do seeds, snapshots, if you want to use slowly changing dimensions, for example. This is the list of functions. This is the list of dbt commands that you have available in dbt projects in Snowflake out of the box. Right? You can compile, you can test, you can run deps, meaning load new packages. So you can even use external packages for dbt inside of dbt projects. And other things like, I mentioned running snapshots. Some of the things that there's some limitations, of course. So not all of the commands that are available in dbt core are available at this point in time in dbt projects, but we also need to keep in mind this is a functionality that's really fresh. It's been announced at Summit 2 months back, is it now? So it's a great starting point, definitely.
Yep.
One thing that I wanted to mention is you can also not to do full runs, but you can do the things that you would normally do in dbt, which is you can specify that you want to run just one specific model, right? So by selecting only, for example, the Eurovision contestants like this, and I'm not executing with defaults, but I'm running it like this, I can actually specify different bits and pieces, and I don't have to run the whole thing, of course. So that's also possible out of the box. And one thing we saw, and you definitely saw it at the beginning because it was there on the screen, is that it automatically builds the lineage for you. So the DAG that actually devises based on the curly brackets here and based on the references that we make in the different models between each other, it builds the dependencies here in the visual view, which is great. And we can see immediately what are the dependencies, how we're running that, and how it actually relates to the different stuff.
So I have a question for you, and it's kind of a curiosity. Snowflake does a great job of capturing metadata of, if you were doing something as a stored procedure and you're running things in that history, is the metadata that is generating as these models run also captured within the metadata inside Snowflake?
Yes, to some extent, we're getting the metadata available inside of Snowflake. There's different ways to look at the metadata, and that's also then how it relates to the monitoring. So we can then track how the dbt projects run and stuff like this. And there's definitely more coming, as I heard that more and more metadata will be exposed, more monitoring views and different views on top of DBT projects will be available. But the short answer is yes, you can also use the metadata in Snowflake.
Great.
Right. So, well, we have the models, right? And for example, we can jump here to, well, what do we want to see, right? We want to see an overview of results of Eurovision throughout the year. So here we have a model that combines data from the contestants, from the countries, staging tables to create some mart of the results overview. So we have this all built. This is all written here. So we ran it in dev, right? We can run it in prod if we have the right permissions to do so, of course. So if I clicked here, run, and if I clicked run, and well, we want to run the whole thing, so we're going to execute it with defaults. We run it. Now we've actually, by changing the profile, we've repointed it to run on a different set of databases, schemas. And now instead of here, as part of dev, we'll be getting the result as part of prod. So if we check the run status, I think it's still running. So there's, of course, it needs to run the dependencies and get that all loaded. But if we check the staging, I'm pretty sure we'll be starting to see some objects being built here. Yeah, and you can see just now. So this is the equivalent of what we saw in the dev is now built in prod. But what I want to mention, this is not the way we want to do this, right? This is not the classic way, or not the way we wouldn't do it in production, that we let the developers actually click the run button and run and rewrite everything on production. That's not the right way. So for that, we can deploy our project. So what do we do? I have it deployed here, but I can disconnect it and redeploy a new one. We select the state of the project. So I have it linked to a repo. I'm here on the main branch now. This is actually linked with a Git repo. I think we're linked to GitHub here. So I select what kind of state of my project do I want to deploy. And then it's just about clicking the deploy project, DBT project button here in the top right corner. So let's deploy a new one. So, well, wherever we can put it into some admin schema, so we can host the project itself. For example, here as part of, I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to call it Eurovision Behind the Cape. I'll deploy it. And by doing this, I'm getting actually an object as part of the admin schema database, general, and DBT projects. I just deployed this object, which is now a callable thing. So we can now run it. And this is the key point, right? I could now schedule it. I can schedule it directly from here. I have a UI for that. So I'm back in my project. I do create schedules, and I can create a new schedule, call it Behind the Cape schedule. We'll run it hourly. We can run it, well, what's the time? 3:36 Central European PM. So I'm going to run it at 38, for example. And now we select what operation will be run. Let's keep it default. And on what profile. I can add the additional flags. And I click create. The schedule's created. And if we check this schema, we'll actually get a new task behind the Cape schedule that actually is executing the DBT project like this. So this is Keith, when I mentioned that you can use the DBT projects together with the different functionalities that Snowflake has and has had for a long time. This is exactly it, right? So I'm running a task, and the task is executing the DBT project with this setup. So I'm running DBT run, and my profile is prod. And we'll be able to see in a minute that it's going to execute it and run it on production.
And when you've gone into production, when you were in dev, it was probably your ID that was running it manually. When you put this into production, now you have it in the schedule, you're now saying you're running it under a certain service account, right, with the permissions of the service account, because maybe you as a developer don't have the permissions in production to see the data, right?
Yeah. Exactly. And you can now do different stuff with this. So as you mentioned, we probably don't want the developer to be able to do this, right? This is a demo project here, so I can do anything. But normally we would then link it to the Git provider, and we wouldn't even do the deployment like this, like by clicking the button in the top right corner. But we would maybe utilize something like GitHub Actions, Azure DevOps pipelines to do the deployment for us on a merge into some specific branch. Then it can be some checks behind the hood, and it can be all linked with our CI/CD process. And exactly, then the runs themselves would be done by a service account that actually can do the things on production that a normal developer can't, for a good reason. And the great thing is, you can then actually, because it's tasks, you don't have to call it through tasks. You can use this execute dbt project from a different thing. You can even use another tool that you use for orchestration to actually run different commands on production in sequence. Or you can create a task tree and actually run the different, maybe first you want to test. So you want to do dbt test first. Then you maybe want to do just one layer. So you do dbt run of a different folder and then another folder. And you're completely free to do this, because this is now in the hands of the normal Snowflake functionalities. And well, you can do whatever you want with that. And I think that's great.
Yep. Excellent.
Now, I think we've run it. So let's see. I think we should see a success message, and it's here. So it took 22 seconds. We can also, and I talked about the monitoring. So if you deploy, you want to probably monitor, and you want actually to consume to metadata, maybe also different weights. If we check the dbt project, if we can have a look at the run history. So you can see it succeeded a minute ago. It was a simple run on the prod environment, right? And you can see the output. So you can see what actually happened as part of the run. And you get this information about what actually finished, what not. And this is all being logged behind the hood as well. And it's really on how you design it, how you want to use this and how you want to utilize the metadata that you also mentioned to do the overall tracking and overall monitoring of everything.
Yep. Fantastic.
Right. So then, couple of thoughts that I've been testing it with our clients on different use cases. And one thing that I haven't shown today is that you can also use the Snowflake command line to execute dbt commands and to actually work with your dbt project. So if you're, for example, used to using Visual Studio Code and doing everything from Visual Studio Code, you can do that. You have the command, if you have the Snowflake command line installed, you can use the dbt execute and dbt deploy directly from the command line. So you're not necessarily restricted to the workspaces space for your development. So those hardcore developers that like their development environments will be free to use whatever they want and run dbt projects on top of in Snowflake, also from other places, which I think is great. So I think, like, for me, it's great that the dbt that's inbuilt in Snowflake actually like combines all the different pieces. There are some limitations, of course. It's a new functionality, but it gives us a great baseline. And for me, it's a game changer. I love dbt. I love working with it. I love working with dbt on top of Snowflake. And now, well, I can work with dbt inside of Snowflake. What's better?
The best of both worlds, right?
Yeah.
Every time we turn around with Snowflake, I can't keep up with all the capabilities that we have. I mean, I started with Snowflake in 2018, and it was, I'm going to say it was a database, right?
Yeah.
And it's turned into a complete data management ecosystem. And every time you turn around, there's more, more goodies for us to chew on. So I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the great thing is the dbt is embedded. So for example, you can see here in this model that I've disabled it, so that it's not running for a long time, but you can embed the Cortex functions inside of your dbt models as well, because it's just SQL that you're writing here. So
right.
That's also great. So for example, here we're translating lyrics from whatever language it is to English, and we're using Cortex directly inside of dbt projects. No problem at all.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Right, so this is my showcase of DBT projects. I hope
All
it
right, I'm going
made
to
sense.
bring us back so everybody can see our pretty faces again. But yeah, that was fantastic. I know for myself, we all get very busy into our day to day in um, though in my role at data ops, we have a huge interaction with dbt projects, and maybe in one of my future episodes I'll get into how we even take our partnership with Snowflake and take what you've shown to an even higher level. But in general, I don't get to see everything in action, so I love doing these shows because I get to see stuff I don't get to see every day, and this was very informative, and it was very helpful, and I'm sure everybody enjoyed it as well. Will enjoy it as well.
Yeah, thank you very much, Keith. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
And yeah,
and for those of you, we will share in the comments below that Jan's LinkedIn profile if you want to connect with him on LinkedIn. Also, you did mention the user group in Europe. I will give you guys the link to the user group registration. So if you go on to Snowflakes and register, any updates about events, you'll automatically get those emails. Keep an eye out from Jan's and stuff. But thanks again for coming. This was fantastic, and I enjoyed having you.
thank you very much, Keith. Pleasure's mine. See you soon.
Yes. Bye, everybody, and we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody. Bye.